In Malaysia's criminal history, few tragedies have left as deep a scar as the murder of Chiik Yap. It is a story that begins with the simple act of two sisters going for a jog, and it ends with nearly 2 decades of grief, courtroom battles, and a nation demanding justice against the weight of privilege and power. It is not just the story of one woman's brutal death. It is the story of a family's relentless refusal to give up, even when the system itself seemed to turn against them. And it is a reminder that sometimes justice is not given easily. It must be fought for, step by painful step. Chiik Yap was born in 1981, the third of 5 children in a Malaysian Chinese family from Kedah. Life for the Yaps was never easy. Money was scarce, opportunities limited, but Chiik stood out from an early age. Bright, determined, ambitious, she carried herself with a quiet confidence that made her family believe she would achieve great things. She studied hard, excelled in sports, and carried herself with a natural kindness that made her both admired and loved. In 2000, she became the first in her family to gain entry to university, enrolling at University Utara, Malaysia. For her parents, this was more than an accomplishment. It was hope. For her siblings, she was the example, the one who proved that struggle could lead to success. She loved basketball, she loved music, she laughed easily. She had dreams of building a career, helping her family, carving out a life bigger than the financial struggles they had known. But on January 14, 2006, those dreams came to a violent, unimaginable end. That Saturday evening began in the most ordinary way. Chiik and her younger sister, Yap Chuen, decided to jog at a park near their home in Sungai, Petani. It was something they often did. The sun was lowering, the air still heavy with humidity, the sounds of children echoing from nearby houses. Concerned for her younger sister's safety, Chiik said she would run alongside her. She had a black belt in Taekwondo. She was strong, confident, protective. She reassured her sister as they stretched and began their run. Then, like sisters often do, they split their pace. Chuen a little slower, Chiik sprinting ahead, her figure disappearing along the track. It was the last time Chuen saw her alive. Minutes passed, then half an hour. When it was time to regroup, Chiik was gone. Chuen began to search, calling out her sister's name, walking further than usual, her pulse quickening with unease. And then she saw it, one of Chiik's shoes, lying by the roadside. Next to it, a dark stain on the ground. Blood. Panic took over. She ran to a security guard at the nearby club, begging for help, pointing to the blood. But the guard dismissed her fears, suggesting it could be from an old accident. She had no phone. With no choice, she sprinted home, her lungs burning, to tell her mother what she had seen. Within minutes, police were called, and within hours, 40 officers were combing through the park and its surroundings, flashlights cutting through the dark, voices calling into the night. From early evening until past midnight, they searched every path, every corner, but there was no sign of Chiik. At 2:30 a.m., the silence broke. A passerby walking near the bushes of a golf course in Seberang Perai stumbled upon something that made his blood run cold. A body lying semi-naked, discarded like garbage. Police rushed to the scene, their flashlights landing on the figure of a young woman. Her clothes were torn, her t-shirt pushed up, her lower body bare. Her skin bore bruises and cuts, more than 50 separate injuries. Her head had been struck with brutal force, her body violated, and across her neck a 6-inch knife slashed so deep it cut into the bone. It was her. It was Chiik. When her mother was brought in to identify the body, she couldn't at first recognize her daughter. Chiik had left home wearing a light blue shirt, but the body before her seemed clothed in red. Then in horror, she realized why. The shirt had been soaked through with blood. Her father's grief turned to rage. He screamed in despair, his words captured in reports that would be quoted for years. "The killer already assaulted my daughter. Why did he have to murder her too?" It was the question that haunted not just the family, but an entire nation. News of the murder spread instantly. By morning, newspapers carried the story on their front pages. Radio stations repeated it. Neighbors, strangers, officials, everyone was horrified. Chiik Yap's name became a symbol overnight, a young woman whose life was stolen in cruelty and whose killers must be brought to justice. Police immediately formed a task force. Witnesses reported a suspicious black Proton Wira speeding from the park that night. Investigators questioned employees of the nearby golf club, arrested foreign workers, even detained a man they believed suspicious. But one by one, DNA tests cleared them all. The blood stains, the traces, they belonged to no one in custody. Leads dried up. Days turned into weeks. The case went cold. But the Yap family refused to let it fade. They held press conferences, spoke to reporters, demanded answers. They printed posters, organized gatherings, begged the authorities not to forget their daughter. Their persistence became a quiet rebellion against a system that often moved slowly, especially when the suspect had influence. And finally, in 2009, 3 years after the murder, the investigation was reopened. This time, forensic science had advanced. DNA testing had improved, and the results were damning. A single profile emerged from the evidence, pointing to one man, 28-year-old Sharil Jaffar. Outwardly, he seemed ordinary. A car salesman, married, with a young child. But his background told a different story. His father was wealthy, politically connected, a man of status honored with the title Datuk. The DNA matched, the black. Proton Wira traced to his family. His house stood close to the crime scene. Everything fit. But before he could be tried, Sharil fled. He boarded a plane and escaped to Australia, leaving behind his wife, his child, his home. For 2 years, he lived freely abroad, shielded by privilege, untouchable. The Yap family watched in agony as the man they believed had destroyed their daughter's life walked streets freely in another country. In 2012, he returned briefly to Malaysia. Authorities arrested him on the spot. Finally, the family thought justice would come. But what followed was a trial that nearly destroyed their faith in the system. In 2013, Sharil stood before the court. Prosecutors presented the evidence. DNA matches, eyewitness reports of his car, his flight abroad. They laid out a story of guilt that seemed undeniable. But the judge saw it differently. He dismissed the DNA, saying it was not absolute. He dismissed the circumstantial evidence as weak. And in a decision that stunned the nation, he declared Sharil not guilty. The courtroom erupted in disbelief. Outside, reporters captured the image of Sharil smiling, mocking, walking free. Inside, the Yap family crumbled. Her father nearly collapsed, and at one point, overcome by grief, tried to throw himself from a courthouse balcony. He was restrained, sobbing, screaming that justice had died. Public outrage exploded. Across Malaysia, people protested. 55,000 signed petitions demanding a retrial. The case became a rallying cry for ordinary citizens who saw it as proof of how privilege could shield the guilty. The government could not ignore it. Prosecutors filed an appeal. And in 2014, the Court of Appeal delivered a stunning reversal. The acquittal was overturned. A retrial was ordered. Hope returned. In the retrial, Sharil attempted a grotesque defense. He claimed he had met Chiik that night, that she had agreed to sex in his car for money, and that she left alive. It was a desperate attempt to smear her reputation, to paint her as something she was not. The nation reacted with fury. Prosecutors destroyed his claims with evidence. The brutal injuries on her body, the knife wound, the DNA, the testimony of his flight. He was not a client of a prostitute. He was a predator who abducted, assaulted, and murdered. In August 2015, 9 years after her death, justice was served. Sharil Jaffar was found guilty of rape and murder. He was sentenced to death. For years, he tried to escape the sentence. He appealed in 2016. Denied. He appealed again in 2018. Denied. In 2023, when Malaysia abolished the mandatory death penalty, he seized the opportunity, petitioning for his sentence to be reduced to 30 years. But prosecutors fought back. They argued his crime was exceptional, an act of cruelty that demanded the highest penalty. And in May 2024, the court upheld the death sentence. Nearly 2 decades after Chiik Yap was killed, the legal battle was finally closed. For the Yap family, it was not victory. It was survival. They had spent 18 years trapped in grief, fighting against walls of power, watching the man who destroyed their daughter twist the truth and mock justice. And yet they had never given up. They had forced the system to confront itself. They had made Malaysia look at privilege and demand accountability. But no verdict could bring back Chiik. She was 25 years old. She was bright, kind, determined. She had a future. She had dreams. And all of it was stolen. Her story became a warning that justice can be fragile, that wealth and power can bend systems, and that only persistence, unyielding, painful persistence, can force truth into the light. For Malaysians, the name Chiik Yap is remembered not just for the horror of her murder, but for the courage of her family, for the image of her father collapsing in a courthouse, screaming for justice, for the mother who could barely recognize her own daughter's body because the blood had soaked her clothes red, for the sister who found a shoe and a stain of blood on the road, and who will never forget that moment. This case is not only about one man's cruelty, it is about a family's love. It is about the power of ordinary people to demand justice even when privilege seems unbreakable. It is about the truth that sometimes justice is not swift, not easy, not guaranteed. But it is worth fighting for. You've just heard the story of Chiik Yap, one of Malaysia's most haunting murder cases. But what do you think? Was this only about one man's monstrous cruelty? Or was it also about a system that nearly let privilege protect him? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'll be reading them all. And if you want more stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe to Dark Chronicles Asia, where every week we uncover true crime cases from across Asia and beyond. Cases that reveal not only the darkness of crime, but the strength it takes to fight back. Until next time, stay safe.